Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashodanandana Vajajana Vandana Yashodanandana Vajajana Vandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashodanandana Vajajana Vandana Yashodanandana Vajajana Vandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha. Sorry. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashodanandana Vajajana Vandana Yashodanandana Vajajana Vandana Yamuna Yamuna You can all repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 We are reading from Bhagavad-gita As It Is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. We're reading chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized, and we are on text number 55. So I'll go through the Sanskrit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatam Atmanyevatmana Tishta Stita Pragyastadochate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure, transcendental, consciousness. Report by Srila Prabhupada. The Bhagavatam affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all good qualities of the great sages. Whereas a person who is not so transcendentally situated has no good qualifications, because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Ganagana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So in this shloka, Sri Bhagavan, or Lord Sri Krishna, is beginning to answer the question that Arjun had asked in the previous shloka. Arjun had asked, "O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? How does he walk?" So Arjun wants to know, he's understanding that the best position in the world is to become transcendentally situated. So he wants to know, what can I do, or what can anybody do if they want to attain this position of being transcendentally situated? And Lord Sri Krishna is just, first of all, explaining here that we have to give up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction. Is there some kind of sense gratification that doesn't arise from mental concoction? Yes, because, for example, here we have a material body. To sustain the body, we have to eat, we have to breathe air, we have to drink water. And as far as eating goes, that's become a very, multi-billion-dollar business all over the world, trying to satisfy the senses of people. That's a big form of sense gratification, eating. So when our mental concoction is there, and we're not thinking of Krishna, we're not transcendentally situated, we could want to eat so many things. There's like unlimited varieties of food stuff on the planet. Even in some places, I heard in some parts of China, they eat dogs, which in America, they probably never would do that, because some of the dogs are like the people's children. so they wouldn't do it. But it just goes to show there's so many different types of sense gratification available in terms of food stuff, just a simple thing like food stuff. But we have to give up, Lord Krishna says, all varieties of sense gratification that arise from mental concoction. What is the idea? The idea is that we have to ultimately start to acquire a higher taste in life, a taste for the higher things. Lord Krishna says, if you want to eat, then fine. Patram pushpam palam, to offer me with love and devotion, a fruit, flower, leaf, water. We offer our food that we eat. Devotees offer the food. We say prayers and we offer what Krishna would like, and then we can eat his remnants. Or after the food becomes sanctified, then we honor it, and we also become sanctified in that process, which is going to help us reach a transcendental position. So achieving a higher taste, the rest of this chapter's Lord Krishna is going to explain to Arjuna, how do you get a higher taste in life? Param drishtva navartate. Param means supreme or higher, and drishtva is the taste. So how do we get that param drishtva? We get it by chanting. And for people who don't know anything about Krishna, they start to learn from us we have prasadam distribution. We distribute sanctified food stuff all over the world. And also by distributing books, of course. The devotees attempt to distribute books. And we go out there, and if the people take the literature and read it, they can also get a higher taste and start on the transcendental path, the path to higher consciousness, the path to the Parashakti, which means the internal potency of God, as opposed to the external or considered inferior energy. We want to be absorbed in the internal potency, the Parashakti. And as mentioned, we do this by chanting daily Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We chant this on beads. We chant it also in kirtan, which is group singing. We read transcendental literatures such as this Bhagavad-gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, which was mentioned in the purport also, and Chaitanya Charitamrita. There are so many transcendental literatures, and ultimately this will help us to engage in devotional service. This means that we're serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're engaged in with love and devotion. So when we engaged in this devotional service, it helps us rise to that transcendental platform and achieve great happiness along the way, happiness and peace. So I mentioned that, well, we noticed this week, they had that big problem in Miami with the building collapsing. And I've been passed up Surfside. It was in Surfside, which is part of Miami Beach. And Surfside used to be my turf for book distribution. It used to be my area. I used to do Surfside. I used to go there alone because it's not real big. It's just they have like a downtown Surfside is about 1 or 2 blocks long, you know. And it's within the city of Miami, so it's a little part of Miami on the ocean, on the beach. And so I used to distribute books there at Surfside, so I'm very familiar. And one of my best friends who used to distribute books with me, Madhavi Dasi, she lives 1 block from that building that collapsed. So basically, people are feeling so much compassion towards these people. And what does a devotee feel when a disaster like this happens? We understand that it's karma, etc., but still, we also understand that the highest thing that you can do for these people, that either the ones that have passed away or their family that have to live without them for the rest of their lives, the highest thing that we can do is pray to Lord Krishna. My dear Lord Krishna, please give mercy to all these souls that are suffering, because in the beginning of this chapter, right in the very first purport, Prabhupada says, material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. What did he mean by that? Then he goes on, compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. So basically, in a case like this, of course, if you know the people, you tell them, I'm so sorry this happened, and please accept my condolences, etc. But then also, we have to tell them, your loved one's soul is eternal. Their body has perished in this terrible building collapse, but they're still alive. Their soul is alive. And the soul is not burned, withered by the wind. The soul is eternal, and it is not slain when the body is slain. So we just have to explain that, and that gives people comfort. I've noticed many times on book distribution, I would be distributing, and one time I stopped a lady, and she just burst into tears when I stopped her. I said, "Excuse me, ma'am," and she burst into tears. I said, "Oh my gosh, what happened? What's the matter?" And she says, my only daughter, her daughter had gone to some party in New York and got shot in the head, some fluke or so, I don't know what happened, So I mean, what do you do, So I had to just tell her, ma'am, here's this book, Science of Self-Realization, and it will help you understand that your daughter is eternal, and the more that you understand that, if you pray for her eternal soul, and she would, you could tell that the people, because they hadn't, maybe some of them don't think like that, and they hadn't been thinking like that, and when they start to think like that, it comforts them, it gives them some hope, some hope in life. And we're trying to give books to people so that they can become transcendentally situated. They can get a higher taste in life. And some people, when you're distributing books, some people are very much into it. They'll say, "Oh, this book you just gave me, my friend had told me that I should get this book, so I'm very happy to get it." So some people they're ready, to take that step and advance spiritually. And then other people, it might be just the opposite. One time I was distributing books, and this tall American guy, I noticed he had been watching me for quite a while, So I just said to him, "Did you see our books?" I held up a book, Bhagavatam. Did you see the books?" He goes, "No, and I don't want to either." But I could perceive that he was educated and actually intelligent. So I told him, "Yes, I need to find someone to give this book to with some brain substance, not just cow dung." And And when he heard that, he was like, what? It was like a kind of like a challenge or something. So he picked up one of the books. Actually, it was Chaitanya Charitamrita. We didn't distribute him that often, but sometimes we did. So he picked it up and started reading it. And he was reading it for a while. And then after a while, he became very impressed with the passage in the book. And he read it out loud. And this is what the passage said. It's Prabhupada's purport: the visible effect of this chanting is that the members of the Hare Krishna movement, regardless of their backgrounds, all give up the 4 principles of sinful life and come to an elevated standard of devotion. So after reading this, he became a little bit serious and he lost his nonsense attitude. And he ended up taking a book and contributing to Lord Chaitanya's movement. So there's all kinds of people out there. I was living in Miami for a long time, like maybe 25 years or something. And one time the devotees used to do Harinam just about, I mean, every day we had some Harinam. So there was one guy who used to see the devotees going by, and he really, for some reason, he really hated the Hare Krishna devotees. So what he did is one day he dumped a bucket of water out of his window onto the devotees as they were passing by, chanting Hare Krishna in the street. So then there's a university in Miami called Florida International University. They call it FIU. And there's one professor there, and he's still there. His name is Professor Alvarez, and he's in the Department of Religious Studies, does world religions. He's an educated guy. He's got his master's from Harvard University. And so he used to have people from different religions come, and he had me come several times. So one time after I was speaking there, and it was a good class. There were a lot of people, like it was in the auditorium type thing with like maybe 70 people and big and nice. And so you're able to give a good presentation for a long time, like an hour and a half or 2 hours. And then after that, he started to feel guilty, this man who had dumped the water. He was in the class. So he went up to Professor Alvarez and he said, I hated the Hare Krishnas for so many years. What can I do about it? Now I see that maybe, they're not such bad people. So Professor Alvarez told him, you have to spend some time with the Hare Krishnas then, So what this man did is he came to our temple on, I don't know if he knew it was Janmashtami or if he just happened to come and it was Janmashtami, but he created a film, and he filmed the devotees and made a film. And later he showed that to Professor Alvarez, and Professor Alvarez told me this story. Otherwise I wouldn't have known that happened. So, I mean, it just shows that even somebody who's inimical, they can get a higher taste, So, and I'm very happy, by the way, I'm very honored to be speaking at 26 2nd Avenue, Hare Krishna NYC today. Because why? Wow, mainly because Prabhupada pretty much started the whole movement at 26 2nd Avenue. I mean, you could say he was there from 1966 to 1968, right? Is that correct? And I've thought of a couple interesting things that happened there that I've read about throughout the years. In 1966, this was at the end of August. At that time, all over America, people were protesting the Vietnam War, and they would have like peace rallies, etc. And at that time also, the Secretary General of the United Nations was U Thant, and he also didn't agree with the Vietnam War. So he called to have a peace rally right outside of the United Nations. And Srila Prabhupada had met in the course of his travels around New York City, because Prabhupada would walk all over the place in New York. And he had met Mr. Larry Bogart, who happened to work at the United Nations. So he was Prabhupada's acquaintance at the United Nations. So Mr. Bogart he set up so that the devotees had a 2-hour slot for this rally. So the devotees got there, I think, at about 8 in the morning. I think they had the 8 to 10 slot. And first they started with the kirtan, but they didn't go too long. And then the moderator said, well, actually, this is supposed to be a silent vigil. So they sat down and they chanted their japa for a while. And then somebody spoke and they asked Prabhupada to come speak. So Prabhupada spoke on peace, actually the peace formula. When the world accepts God as the supreme proprietor, the proprietor of everything, the owner of everything, and when they accept God as the dearmost friend of everybody, then only can we have real peace. Prabhupada spoke like that day. And then after that, I don't know how long after that, but Prabhupada was talking to this UN friend, United Nations worker, Larry Bogart, and Prabhupada invited him to come for lunch, because Larry was saying, maybe, we can see, how we can work together, the Hare Krishnas in the United Nations. So Prabhupada invited him for lunch to 26 Second Avenue. And Prabhupada was cooking the lunch that day, and he posted Stanley to outside the door, he asked Stanley not to, let anybody in while he was cooking, so that he could do a nice job for this, gentleman's coming for lunch. But unfortunately, Stanley was a little foolish, and when Mr. Bogart came, he wouldn't let him in, so there, and after a while, he stood around for a while, but after a while he left. So Prabhupada was, totally disappointed. I mean, when I read that, it just kind of broke my heart. I said, oh my gosh. And so I'm imagining that all of you living in New York, you probably have all encountered UN workers since then and given them books, or probably have a lot, maybe there's a lot of devotees that work there now. I don't know, but I was, here in Alachua, what happened was, I always thought that story, I didn't feel very satisfied when I heard that, Prabhupada wasn't able to give his friend a nice lunch that he had spent so much. Can you imagine Srila Prabhupada cooking for you alone? Oh my goodness, So much love and bhakti he puts into everything anyway. But so what happened was, a few years ago, probably 2017, I was in the kitchen at ISKCON Alachua. Here we're in North Central Florida, and I saw a car parked, and it said the license plate said diplomat. So I said, really, who's got a diplomat license plate here? So I went in the kitchen, and it was there's a devotee there, and his name is Govinda Ananda Rodriguez from Venezuela. His parents had been devotees, so he was raised as a devotee. And then he went into, he's kind of intellectual type person, scholarly. So he went into working as a diplomat. First, he worked like 6 years in London as an attaché for the ambassador to his country, Venezuela, to England. And then when that ambassador moved to the United Nations, he went with them. And he became a regular United Nations worker for 12 years. So he was working there 12 years at the United Nations in New York City. And dealing with Middle Eastern problems, between Syria, Afghanistan, Palestine. He would draft different kinds of negotiations. And so there he was in the kitchen. What was he doing in the kitchen? Because his brother, Ramachandra, lives here in Alachua, and he cooks the daily lunch for the devotees. So he was helping them cook, because they're both raised as devotees. They both know how to cook. So he was helping them cook. And what happened was this United Nations worker liked the way that his brother was living with the devotee schools. We have two schools here, one charter school and one pure devotee school, and about a total of about 300 students in the schools, you know. And he liked it so much that he said, I'm quitting the United Nations and I'm moving here to put my kids in the school and to cook for Krishna. So that's what he did after 18 years in the diplomatic field. But I mean, I just thought that was the United Nations, you know. It made me feel so good after Prabhupada was disappointed and couldn't give his friend lunch, that to know that a devotee was working at the United Nations, and you know, and so I thought that was something special. And another story about 26 Second Avenue, which was I love, is that Prabhupada, you know how he used to walk all over New York. So one time he met a man and his wife on his journeys, and he invited them to 26 Second Avenue. So they came. And this man was a blind Christian pastor, and not just a pastor, he was a gospel and blues singer. And his name is Reverend Gary Davis. And the interesting thing is that this man was born the exact year as Prabhupada, 1896. So they were just the same age. Exactly. So what happened was, well, actually, when I heard this story that Prabhupada met him and that he came to 26 Second Avenue, I said, who is this person? I looked him up on YouTube. And on YouTube, there's all sorts of videos of him. They call him Blind Gary Davis, or however you want to call him. Gary Davis, Reverend Gary Davis. He lived until 1972. He was born in 1896. And he sang songs like Death Don't Have No Mercy. You know, it was all gospel and blues, you know. And even he had some fame because his songs were sung. They were covered by Bob Dylan and Grateful Dead, Rolling Stones, like that. And he himself sang in England and at the Newport Folk Festival, things like that. So anyway, him and his wife went to 26 Second Avenue. They were very elderly, just like Prabhupada. So the devotees gave them two kind of high back chairs to sit in. So they were actually seated higher than Prabhupada, because Prabhupada was on the floor, leaning back against the bolster. But Prabhupada didn't mind, you know. So the Reverend was kind of, he walked with a cane, just like Prabhupada did. So he was kind of hitting the cane against the floor, and he was saying, it's difficult to know what to pray for. You know, what should we pray for? So then Prabhupada told him, he said, we have to pray to God. Please, how can I love you? We should ask for his love. That's what Prabhupada said. And I saw this, by the way, the first time I read this, read about this, it's in the Srila Prabhupada Leela, Around the World, 1967 to 1969, by Satsvarup Das Goswami. So it says about him being there, and then I got some more information by looking him up on YouTube, you know. But I thought that was very interesting that happened at 26 Second Avenue, and that was a long time ago. So basically, we have to become transcendentally situated. I mean, if we don't become transcendentally situated, we'll have to take birth again in the material world. It's getting, if you haven't noticed, it's getting worse all the time. It's getting like worse and worse because, my gosh, some of the news you hear about on a daily basis, believe me, you would have never heard about half of these different types of topics 50 years ago. You just didn't, some of these things are just like, oh my gosh, what's this world coming to? So it seems like it's getting worse and worse all the time. So better the Vedic philosophy is purify our hearts, purify our consciousness, and we're trying to finish up in this lifetime. Means meditate on God. God is in our heart. He's our dearmost friend. And if we can finish up in this lifetime, we have a chance to go back to the spiritual world where 3/4 of the living entities never left to come to the material world. But the 25% of us up there said, somebody said, oh, it's like somebody says to you, oh, it's a really good movie. It's the best movie. You have to see it. So you go to see the movie and you say, oh my gosh, I didn't even like that movie. What is this? So it's like, here we are. We heard that it was a really great movie, live Technicolor, cast of billions. But it turns out that if you come here, you have to grow old, get sick, die. That part we don't like. Just like they have this, it's called Arda Kukutu Nyai. It's a philosophy. Nyai means the philosophy of Arda Kukutu. Arda is half, Kukutu is hen. Half hen philosophy. It means the guy was saying, oh yeah, I really love my hen because the back end of my hen is delivering eggs and I can sell them for money. But actually, I don't like the front half because I have to buy food. I have to spend my money and buy food and feed it. So what I think I'll do, I think this is a brilliant idea. I'll just cut the hen in half and I'll keep the back half and then I won't have to feed it. So you see, that's like, of course, foolish and, but that's Arda Kukutu Nyai, thinking that you can do some things, but not, some things I like, but some things maybe I don't like. But so in Krishna consciousness, we're just trying to purify our hearts, become more loving and have more love and devotion for God and therefore all living entities. If you water the root of the tree, then the whole tree will flourish. You can't just water the little leaf or put some water on the bark. We have to water the roots. So if we glorify God, then everything will flourish like that. So I have a few more. I have some book distribution stories I could tell, or I could answer any questions if anybody has questions. This is kind of a sweet story. I lived for 5 years at Juhu Temple. Juhu used to be called Bombay. Now they call it Mumbai, same place. And Juhu is a beautiful temple. 22 domes of carved marble. It's just, for me, it's the most beautiful temple in the world. And there's a nice devotee there called Dadi Baksha. He's my godbrother. And this was Kartik time. And actually, for Kartik, a lot of devotees from different places in India go to Vrindavan because it's the holiest place, the Dham, holy Dham. Dham is spelled D-H-A-M. It means the holy, very, really holy place. Why? Because Lord Krishna lived there for so long while he was on this planet, in his manifest form on this planet. So Dadi Bhaksha and Prabhupada and a lot of devotees were in Vrindavan, and it was Kartik time, the holy time of the year, and they were walking, circumambulating. You circumambulate the temple. So they were doing that. And Prabhupada told us, if you circumambulate the temple, it's like visiting all the holy places. It's the same thing. So that's what he told us. So Prabhupada was talking to all the devotees. He was being followed by maybe, anywhere from 10 to 20 devotees. So Prabhupada was saying, and so Krishna likes sweets because Krishna is very famous, especially baby Krishna. He loves all the sweets, all kinds of sweets. So Krishna likes sweets, Prabhupada was saying. And then from way in the back of the group of people, this devotee was back there, and he called out, Srila Prabhupada, I like sweets. He's very humble and very simple Indian devotee, And actually, interestingly enough, his body, he's albino, like all, white hair and everything, So anyway, everyone stopped and turned around, and some of the devotees were kind of looking at him like, how can you throw in your 2 cents, like that. And Prabhupada said, what is this? So your name is Dadi Bhaksha Das, servant of Krishna the yogurt eater. So Srila Prabhupada just initiated him on the spot on a walk around the temple. He was initiated on the spot, and everyone said, Jai Prabhupada. Oh, interesting, here where we are in Alachua, it's just about 10 miles from Gainesville, which is University of Florida, big university town. University of Florida is one of the, it's always in the top 5 of student population in the United States. And we have a lot of, over 50,000 students, And this, in 1 month, at the end of July, we're having the 50th anniversary of when Prabhupada came to Gainesville. Prabhupada came to UF, University of Florida. There's a devotee, our god brother, Armarendra, and he was a man about campus. He knew everybody, all the big students and everybody. So he would tell his friends, you have to allocate some money so that my Guru Maharaj can come here and speak. He won't come unless you pay for his ticket and this and that. So, and his friend was putting it off. Finally, he said, okay, here's your check and bring them, So Prabhupada came, and there's pictures that day. Hridayananda was there. He was Grihasta at that time, was holding the umbrella because it was a little drizzly over Prabhupada, speaking in they call it the Mall of the Americas there in the center of campus, and it's still there. And so he was busy all day speaking and preaching to the devotees, this and that. Finally, at night, it was almost midnight, and the devotees said, oh my gosh, Prabhupada, we were supposed to have an initiation ceremony, and now we just found out that you're leaving before Mangalartik. What can we do? It's almost midnight. And Prabhupada said, we will do it right now. So Prabhupada began chanting on the beads, and he just gave out the names. He said, your name is Dharma Das. Dharma's now been in Miami for those 50 years, wonderful devotee. Your name is Armarendra Das. Armarendra is the one that got Prabhupada to come, and he's been a lawyer for so many years in Los Angeles. Now he's retired and he's here, and his son is a lawyer here. Your name is Gayatri Devi. Gayatri was Amarinda's wife, and she's the one that actually made up the recipe for Garunga potatoes. She's, if everybody loves them, a lot of people love them. And she said, I was a Kadashi and I was trying to think of what can I do with potatoes? We always have potatoes on a Kadashi. So what can I make that's, some outstanding? So Garunga potatoes, they're fantastic, So we just initiated everybody in the spot, and they had like a yagya a different day, some other time. And so now we're having next, at the end of July, we're having the 50th anniversary of when Prabhupada came to Gainesville, Florida. And that Prabhupada made that famous statement, because they were worshiping Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so kind. He even came to this far remote corner of the world. Gainesville, Florida, So ever since that time, by the way, we have been having Krishna lunch, which means feeding the students Monday through Friday during the school days, And I mean, it's a big deal now, Whenever they give a tour to all the hundreds of new students, they always stop and say, now, this is where Krishna lunch is. You come here every day between such and such time, and you can have your lunch with the Hare Krishnas, and they're dancing and singing, and it's very nice. They always make a point, and they have a plaque there, and they have a bench, they have a sign saying Krishna lunch, everything. It's very nice. I mean, they feed like also 1,500 students lots of days, and faculty members. And I was just reading one. What is that story? I had, this is an example. Because you meet people all the time. I'd be distributing books, and this one guy came carrying those big suitcases, not suitcases, briefcases that are real big and wide. He had one in each hand, two of them, imagine. So he walked up to me, put down the briefcase, and he said, are you with the Hare Krishnas? I said, yeah. He said, they fed me throughout when I went to the University of Florida. I want to give you a donation. This is a good organization, So anyway, these other devotees, book distributors, were in Tampa, which is also Florida. And they were traveling in a motorhome, distributing books throughout with the motorhome. And so here they were in Tampa in the motorhome, and they were sitting around in their gumshas ready to take rest. And they get a knock on the door. They looked out the window, and they were surrounded by 7 police cars. And when they opened the door, somebody said, what are you doing? And they said, we're distributing love of God. And the guy goes, prove it. So they handed him a Bhagavad-gita. And you won't believe this. It's a little hard to believe. When they gave the man the Bhagavad-gita, he said, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. And he was the head cop out of these 7. And he said, I went to school at the University of Florida, and I ate Krishna lunch every day. He said, the Hare Krishnas practically supported me through my college years. He said, these books are so wonderful. And he encouraged all of his fellow policemen to give a donation and take a book. And they did. And that's a true story. I thought it was sweet. So is there anybody have question, comment, addition, subtraction? Let's see.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu.
Krishna Mataji, I just want to say I really enjoyed your class and all the stories about Prabhupada that we were given. They're very encouraging. to me in terms of the book distribution. It's something I plan on doing. So it's good to always hear these stories. So Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
I sent you some questions. I wrote them down.
Can you just read it? Because I can't see that part of the screen. So just
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I sent you, why is the Bhagavad-gita more famous than any other Hindu text? And what, Mom, I'm in a meeting. Who is thought to have written the Bhagavad-gita? Who is the author? What did he do? Is Krishna the one true God of the Hindu faith? Is he Atman personified?
Okay, we'll stop there. Otherwise, I'll forget your questions. So the first question was, why is the Bhagavad Gita so famous? Or
Yes.
yeah, well, Bhagavad Gita means Song of God. And actually, these books are considered to be aparosheya, which means that they didn't really come from a person or a normal person, but they came from a supreme source. All of the literatures actually come from the Vedas. The word Veda means knowledge, but the Vedas considered to be the instruction manual that came with the universe. So imagine, they're actually billions of years old. And Bhagavad Gita is an actual conversation that was held between Lord Krishna and Arjuna before the Battle of Kurukshetra. This book, Bhagavad Gita, is included within another very famous book called the Mahabharata. Mahabharata is considered a historical text. I mean, it's the history of India. It tells so many things, and this book is, Bhagavad Gita is within that book. But Srila Prabhupada is, our Guru Maharaj has printed this Bhagavad Gita as it is. Why? Because he realized that looking around, there were hundreds of different editions of Bhagavad Gita written by different people, and some of those people with a pure heart. You could tell by what the purports that they wrote, they were missing some of the points. In other words, they weren't doing it for love of God. You know, they were actually misleading people in some way. So he decided that he would do the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And therefore, you know, we have been distributing this book now for so many years, and hundreds and thousands and millions of copies of this book we distribute. Why? Because as we mentioned in class, for example, even we call it our guru's guru, we call our param guru. It means kind of like a grandfather guru. And our param guru is Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And even he said about this second chapter that we're reading today, he said it contains the whole Gita in a nutshell, in summarized. So that's why, like maybe if we're distributing this book to somebody, every book distributor knows that sometimes people will tell you, oh, I would never read such a big book. I'll give you a donation, but you keep the book. But a lot of times you can tell people like that, well, you know, you don't have to read this whole book, but just read the second chapter, because it's all summarized there. And if you read that, if you even read 1 page a day, it'll uplift your consciousness. Means you could be in a very stressful situation or worried about something, because here in the material world, we're always worried about either our own health, our house, our kids, our family, our spouse, something, finances, our job, we're worried about something. So you tell people when we're out there, we tell people, if you're feeling any type of stress or any depression on your mind, if you just pick up this, read the second chapter, read even one page, and I guarantee you it will, to some degree, uplift your consciousness. And because this book is non-different from Lord Krishna, so it's actually the internal potency of God. That's why this book has lasted for billions of years. It was originally spoken by the sun god, they say. The sun god was not, of course, an ordinary human being. He's called Surya Narayan, which means God coming in the personification of the sun to drive the sun chariot. And what other question did you have? I'm sorry. I hope.
Is Krishna actually Atman personified?
Is Krishna? Yeah.
Atman.
Yes, Krishna is. Well, there's three aspects of Krishna. Paramatma is one of them. Paramatma means Param is supreme, and Atma is our soul. But he's the supreme soul. He's the only one that's Paramatma. All of us are individual Atma, or they say Jiva Atma also. It means the living entity who can be conditioned. We can either be completely covered by the modes of material nature, and or the other end of the spectrum is we can be Krishna conscious. Which means, like Prabhupada used to say, sitting on the lap of Krishna, which meant that Govinda personally is dealing with us rather than the modes of material nature, So in between, there's all sorts of things on the spectrum. But yes, Lord Krishna is Paramatma. He's also Bhagawan. What does Bhagawan mean? That's another aspect of God. Bhagawan means Aishvarasya, Samagrasya, Viryasya, Yashashashriya. It means that he's the one that has all 6 superlatives in full. What does he have? He's the strongest person. He's the richest person. He's the most beautiful person. He's the greatest renunciant. He's the most famous person. And did I leave one out? But anyway, wealth, strength. He's the strongest person. So this means, this is one definition for God, is the person who is all those things to the utmost. Means you'll always, for us, we may think, oh, I'm really wealthy, but there's always going to be somebody more wealthy than you. Or somebody could say, I just won the strongman title, but there's going to be somebody stronger than you somewhere on the planet. But Krishna, he's the utmost of all these. So therefore he's Bhagawan. That's another aspect of God. And Brahman is the third aspect. He's all pervading. He's everywhere. He's in everybody's heart, not just human beings, all the living entities. Yeah, and amazing. And he's not only in all of our hearts, he's our dearmost friend. He's the only one that'll never leave us, So he's always with us. So it's inconceivable. Is there another part to that question
That's about it for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. I appreciate your patience. One time, this was 1968 or 1969, but this happened in England. And Trivikram, he's now His Holiness Trivikram Swami, he told us this story, that the room was full of devotees, and they were sitting listening to our Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, speak. And Prabhupada looked out and he noticed one devotee, and he said, "So, Ishan, are you remembering Krishna? And Ishan looked up and said, well, Srila Prabhupada, kind of sheepishly. And Prabhupada said, that is all right. You just remember me remembering Krishna. So then I had heard that story and I liked that story very much, but I didn't know Ishan. Then one day I met him. He was here in Alachua, and very elderly now, of course, So I told him that story, I reminded him of that. And he said, I'll tell you another story. Okay, so he told me another story. They're in the same place, England. Kim and Trivikram used to both massage Srila Prabhupada on alternate days. It means Prabhupada had a daily massage to keep his life airs going, balanced, And this was when they were at Tittenhurst Park. Tittenhurst Park was the home that belonged to John Lennon. And the devotees stayed there for a while, a month or so. And so they were every other day massaging Prabhupada, one or the other. So Trivikram came up to Ishan and he told him, well, I really think that I've gotten the knack of how to massage Prabhupada and do a good job. So I think that you can stop doing it and I'll just do it every day. And how would you feel, if you had the nectar job of massaging Srila Prabhupada and somebody's trying to usurp your, position and kick you out, like that. So Ishan was kind of like, huh? So he didn't say anything. But next time he massaged Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, Trivikram is saying that maybe he should just do this every day and then I can't do it. Is that the way you feel too? And so Prabhupada was laying down there getting the massage and he didn't even lift his head up. He just lifted up his hand and went, any fool can do. Which means that he didn't have to stop. Ishan didn't have to stop massaging Prabhupada, there was a letter to Srila Prabhupada that Prabhupada wrote to all the devotees. He said, please try always to remember me by my teachings, and we shall always be together. Just like I have written in the first publication of the Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada wrote this, the spiritual master lives forever by his divine instructions, and the disciple lives with him. So then Prabhupada said, because I have always served my Guru Maharaj and followed his teachings, I am now even never separated from him. So then one time, my god sister, Yamuna Devi, she asked Srila Prabhupada the question, Srila Prabhupada, how many times were you with your Guru Maharaj? And if you read the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, the biography of Srila Prabhupada, you can see that he was really, it seemed like he was only with his Guru Maharaj a handful of times, not so many times like that. So she asked him, how many times were you with your Guru Maharaj? And Srila Prabhupada answered, since I met him, I have never been away from him, not even for a second. So what does that mean? That means, like he wrote in the Bhagavatam, that the spiritual master lives forever by his divine instructions, and the disciple lives with him. So as long as we are sincere and following the instructions of our teacher, then he's associating with us at every moment. So I'm not sure if this happened It may have happened on when he was living at 26 Second Avenue, but I'm not sure. One of you could probably let me know. But what it was, the devotees had put this ad. They made a happening album. That was called the Happening Album. Chanting Hare Krishna was on the album. The whole, very nice. And Prabhupada speaking a little bit was on the album. So, and then they put an ad in the local newspapers, like the East Village Other, the Village Voice. They put ads, a little coupon, like fill out your name and address, send us $5, and we'll mail you this album, you know. So people were doing that. And Ramananda Prabhu noticed an address. They got an address in Manhattan. And so it said Macmillan Publishers. And so he told Prabhupada, look, you know, somebody from Macmillan Publishers wants to get our album. And Prabhupada had been trying so much to get his Bhagavad-gita published. I mean, he went to so many different places and people, and Brahmananda had been helping him. And they were, you know, they didn't meet with any success. So Prabhupada said, well, when you send them the album, I don't want you to mail it. I want you to bring it in person and meet this person. And then when you meet this person, you tell him, I am a disciple of a guru from India. And he has a Bhagavad Gita to publish. Okay, so Brahmananda went, and he had real high hopes. You know, he's outside of this building. He saw it was an impressive skyscraper, you know. Prabhupada called him skyscraper, you know. So it was a big building, you know. But he was disappointed to find out that the person who wanted the album was just kind of a clerk. He didn't have a very high position, you know. But what happened when he was talking to the clerk, another gentleman came by. And it was an executive, you know. He walked into the room and was introduced to Brahmananda. And Brahmananda immediately went into he said, oh, I am a disciple of a guru from India, and he has a Bhagavad Gita to publish. He did a good job, you know. And the man said, what? We just published a series of spiritual books, and we need a Bhagavad Gita. You bring in your manuscript, and we will publish it, sight unseen. He said, whoever publishes a book, sight unseen. You know, that's what the man said. You know? And the next day, Srila Prabhupada personally brought in the book. You know? So that was very ecstatic, to say the least. Any other questions? If there's no other questions, I will tell another story, if that's okay. Okay, so this happened when the temple was no longer on 26 Second Avenue. This happened in 1980, and the temple was on West 55th Street in Manhattan. And my godbrother and godsister, a married couple, they're called Sarottam Das and Bakula Devi. And they were living there. And it so happened, this was in December 8th, 1980. It so happened that their daughter was born there. The daughter was born in the morning, but by the afternoon, the baby had developed kind of a little cough or something. So Sarottam, they asked my godbrother Casey Ha, who lives here in Alachua, to drive them to Roosevelt Hospital, the ER, you know, the emergency room, which is on West 59th Street. Okay. So they went to the hospital right in between, you know, the temple's on West 55th, Roosevelt Hospital's West 59th. Right in between the two was the well, it wasn't right in between. It was actually north. It was on West 50 on West 72nd Street was the Dakota Apartments, where John Lennon was living with Yoko Ono. And unfortunately, you know, remember John Lennon had helped the devotees tremendously in England when the devotees were all spread out all over London, didn't have a place to, and John Lennon said, just come and stay in my house. I have an extra building. Come and stay there for a while. So it was a really big help at the time. Big service, you know. So so anyway, this was the day the baby was born, on the day that he was shot. And the girl, it was a girl baby. Her name was Sringara. Beautiful name, you know. So they took Sringara to Roosevelt Hospital. And they were at the hospital, and they were in a room, and there was a lady doctor, and she was examining the baby. And then she was called out for a big emergency, you know. So Sarottam, our godbrother, he followed her out to see what's the big, you know, problem. And what happened was, and of course, Sarottam was dressed in, you know, tilak and kurta and dhoti like that, because at that time devotees didn't feel that they had to change their persona to go out to the store or something. So he followed the doctor out, and what was there? Yoko Ono was walking alongside of a stretcher. John Lennon was lying face down on the stretcher, lying on his stomach. He had been shot. And as soon as Yoko saw Sarottam, she said, John, the Hare Krishnas are here. And a moment later, he expired. So, and Sarottam was interviewed by the New York Times, by the way, for the they interviewed everybody, but they interviewed him too. So, so I just see it as Krishna's way of repaying him for the kindness he had shown Prabhupada. He came into his life at the last second, you know, and I think that's significant. And I first heard this story, but I didn't hear all of the details. So I said, oh, what is this? They're not even telling the whole story. What's that? So I got the phone number from Casey I got Sarottam's phone number, and I called him and interviewed him. And I've since called him other times. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's absolutely a true story. And it also, you know, was interviewed by the New York Times. So that's something that happened in New York also. Parantaraj Bhagavad-gita, Srimad Bhagavad-gita, As It Is, Ki Jai. Thank you very much for putting up with me. And hope we all have the blessing to become transcendentally situated in this lifetime, so we can finish up and go back to Godhead, where our eternal family is waiting for us patiently. You know, when are you coming back? For gosh sake, you've been gone so long.
Good. Nartaka Gopala Mataji Ki.
Jai.
Devotees can join me expressing appreciation for Nartaka Gopala Mataji now by like this. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nartaka Gopala Mataji Ki Jai. Hari Bol.
Haribo.